Good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. So, another strike, but an even bigger move. Why the military just rerouted a massive warship to the waters off Venezuela. On the same day, it revealed yet another, the 10th of its kind, drug boat strike. Plus, here at home, in our skies, a much different warning. This one from the man who's in charge of your air travel. What Sean Duffy said today, and how much longer the airports could be understaffed. The latest move tonight from Congress, by the way. Also this evening, pleading not guilty. Letitia James in a federal courtroom and then talking before the cameras after. We'll show you what happened outside the courthouse. And the two teens impacted by that stunning FBI arrest set to take to the court later this evening. How the National Football League is now warning its players after Kash Patel's big announcement. But first tonight, here from The Hill, a warning for Canada, a major military move in the Caribbean, and a president set to head abroad. Tonight, President Trump about to leave the White House for Asia, which will include a face-to-face visit with China's Xi Jinping next week. But before he heads east, a big focus to the north and to our south as well. The president saying he is cutting off trade negotiations with Canada. And then there's this from the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, now ordering an aircraft carrier strike group led by the USS Gerald R. Ford to the Caribbean. The government also revealing another strike on a drug boat near Venezuela, the 10th strike since the start of September. Our Kelly Meyer starts it off for us tonight. She is live once again outside the White House. News all over the globe. Kelly.
Absolutely, Blake, and a busy Friday. There is a significant escalation here, though. President Trump moving the world's largest aircraft carrier group to the U.S. Southern Command area, so that's the Caribbean, South and Central America. This is as he escalates his attacks on those alleged drug boats. The administration says these are, quote, terrorists, and they're going to be killed, as critics push back on whether or not the president has the authority to do this.
Is this a sign that land strikes are imminent?
Well, again, and I appreciate the earnestness of the question, but obviously I'm not going to answer any questions like that. I would just reiterate my previous answer, which is that these designated FTOs are the ISIS of the Western Hemisphere, and as the President made clear yesterday, they will be dealt with just as we dealt with ISIS.
A senior defense official also telling me tonight the Ford is currently in the Med and will be a good several days before it arrives in the Southern Command area. And the Secretary of War announced, as you mentioned, Blake, another strike on the alleged drug boat overnight. That was the first at night, he says. 6 were killed. That brings the total to 10. And these strikes are gaining the attention of Republicans that usually stand by the president. And that's interesting. And they are now expressing concerns the strikes are being carried out without consultation or authorization of Congress. Blake.
A lot going on there. Kelly Meyer, live for us tonight on the North Lawn. Kelly, thank you. So the USS Gerald R. Ford is the Navy's newest aircraft carrier. It's the latest of what's become a major military buildup in the region. For example, the Caribbean Sea here, you can see listed just some of what's in the Caribbean. Puerto Rico, the U.S. moved assets there like a handful of weeks or so ago, a month or two ago. Also in the area, several other assets, all sort of stationed right now in this area outside of Venezuela. F-35 fighter jets, for example, deployed to the region. The U.S. has now struck, as Kelly mentioned, 10 alleged drug boats in the Caribbean and Pacific Oceans. And the pace of those seems to be accelerating at this point, getting sort of like one after the next. The president's signaling this week that land strikes could be next.
I told him that's going to be next. You know, the land is going to be next. And we may go to the Senate, we may go to the, Congress and tell them about it. But I can't imagine they'd have any problem with it.
All right, with me now here on the Hill, retired Brigadier General, retired Air Force Brigadier General John Tykert. General, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill.
Blake, thanks for having me.
This is a lot. What is this? What does this signal to you?
So this is going to double in size when the Ford Carrier Strike Group gets to the Caribbean Sea.
So this goes 2x.
This does. And it demonstrates the priority of one of 11 aircraft carriers now will be in the Caribbean, that it's the most advanced, as you said, and it leaves Europe without a carrier strike group. But like I said, that carrier strike group is probably 8 ships, 7,000 sailors. It makes this a lot bigger than it was before.
How hard is it to do this? It's obviously time, it's money, it's effort, it's probably a whole lot more than that. But how hard is it to even get to this point?
Like, the military is very skilled at the operations involved in this. The headquarters of Southern Command is in Miami. All of the air operations is run out of Arizona. They will make sure there is deconfliction and also clarity in what the operation is all about.
Leading up to before the president bombed Iran, right? There was a lot of movement in the region. Things were moving here or there, and then all of a sudden, bang, it happened, right? Is this giving you Iran vibes? Like, the president's talking about land strikes, assets are moving it, they are there, more is going. Is this giving you sort of similar vibes, for lack of a better word?
Like, it does. It gives the president at least the option for a robust set of strike capabilities in the region that he wouldn't have otherwise before. And so either he's looking for options, he's looking for pressure on Venezuela and maybe Colombia and Ecuador, but it certainly does give him the capability, like the Middle East had the capability back in June, to fulfill his desires based on requirements in the region.
So I'll stick with Iran, obviously totally different scenario and everything. But we remember what happened before there was a strike. There was a lot of concern, oh my gosh, if the president does this, what could it mean all around the globe? We saw the strike, and Iran sent a few missiles, told us beforehand, and that was it. If the president were to go the route of land strikes there in Venezuela, what could Venezuela's response be and potentially look like?
Blake, Venezuela does have some air defenses, so there is some risk to American forces, manned American forces primarily, if they decided to use those to strike. But as far as anything that
you mean manned American, like in fighter jets or
drones or whatever it may be, that they do have capability to some extent to defend themselves. Nothing like Iran had,
right.
But we haven't degraded their air defenses like Israel had done to Iran before those B-2 strikes.
You think we're headed to some sort of a strike?
I think the president is trying to create those options. I think he directed the Secretary of War to go to the Hill yesterday during his task force roundtable, and I think that provides even more top cover and emphasis that he is ready to do something here to unravel the cartels and their threat to the United States.
I'm not sure many people had Venezuela on their 2025 bingo card for Donald Trump here in the second term, but here we are, and it's why we continue to watch it. John Teichert, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I'm sure we'll catch you next week.
You got it.
All right. That military flex, by the way, to our south, just as the president directs some tough economic talk to our north. Trade talks now halted seemingly between the U.S. and Canada. It all centers on an ad that's running in Canada, which shows Ronald Reagan criticizing tariffs. It prompted the president to post on social media that he's cut off trade talks with our neighbor to the north. A top Canadian leader saying today they plan to run the ad this weekend to American audiences watching the World Series, which involves the Toronto Blue Jays. The Prime Minister, Mark Carney, saying that Canadians are ready to pick up where they left off.
We stand ready to pick up on that progress and build on that progress when the Americans are ready to have those discussions, because it will be for the benefit of workers in the United States, workers in Canada, and families in both of our countries.
Carney and Trump, or at least Trump in a few hours here, both on their way to Asia. Trump set to meet with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping next week as well. U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports right now sit at 55% as the two countries work to hammer out a trade deal, as you know. But it's been a bumpy ride. China putting restrictions on rare earth minerals that are crucial for things like computers, smartphones, cars. Trump then threatening 100% additional tariffs on China and export restrictions on U.S. software. But today, markets closing in the green, shrugging all this off on the belief that interest rate cuts are now firmly around the corner. How about this? The S&P 500 at an all-time high. I don't know why we're showing soybeans. If it was an S&P 500 chart, it'd be the other way. The Dow and NASDAQ both up by 1% or close to it this week. There we go. You love the green on your screen. How about that? Joining me now, Ryan Peterson, CEO of Flexport, one of the guys I love to talk to in this spot. Flexport, one of the leaders, the leader, let's call it, in global logistics. Ryan, happy Friday. Help me out here, brother, with my voice. I'm fighting something. Take it from here if you don't mind. China. Look, here's the reality. The market's shrugging it off, right? We saw this sort of play out last time. I was reading your posts. You were talking about how there was a big dip, like something like 60% in volume the last time the president threatened this. What are you seeing right now?
Yeah, and so when April 2nd, the first tariffs were announced, or under the new Trump administration, or the big ones, it was a huge tariff on China, around 145%. And just as you said, volumes declined 60% on ocean freight from China to the U.S. for about 5 weeks while those tariffs were live. The tariffs go live again on November 1st, unless something changes. And we have not seen a decline in volumes. Volumes are holding pretty steady, which says that importers believe that he's gonna, change his mind, or that there's some kind of a deal, or that these 100% increase won't happen on November 1st, which is next week. Because by the way, those containers are already on the water, so if it hits, the importers are gonna get stuck with those duties.
Yeah, I guess it gets to the point of, like, at this point, what's the signal, Ryan? Because a lot of folks are like, we're into this, what now, 6, 7, 8 months or something like that at this point. And you've got the biggest view all across the globe. What's the signal that you look for?
Yeah, I mean, it is sort of these volumes, these departures. We also look at purchase order data. So Flexport, we manage purchase orders for hundreds of companies, submitting those purchase orders over to their factories overseas and executing those. And those are also kind of holding steady. So we don't see any aberrations there where people think tariffs are going to disrupt their business. And I think people have kind of learned the lesson a little bit of not to overreact, that there tends to be a deal on the horizon. Things aren't as bad as they look. And yet you just don't know what's going to happen. But I think people who did overreact and said, hey, we got to move our manufacturing out of China. Let's shift it to India, for example, start buying from factories down there. And then you wake up and find out currently, tariffs on India are just as high as they are on China. So if you overreact, you could get hit with something just as bad. These need long-term decision making.
I saw you right the other day, finished a 3-day annual planning session for 2026 yesterday. Today, Trump announces an additional 100% duty on Chinese goods, FML. We all know what that stands for. But I guess it gets to the point of, how do you look forward here? And what are you hearing from people about looking forward with all this back and forth right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be ready plan for the unimaginable, and hedge for regression to the mean is two of the, and just got to invest in what you need to go do and figure out where you want to differentiate, but be ready for all possible outcomes. It's very difficult for businesses. It's very costly to have contingency plans, but you are seeing businesses start to set up where they're going to do multi-country sourcing and not be dependent on just one country to produce a given product, but be able to produce it in multiple countries. It costs more, but it gives you a lot of flexibility in an uncertain environment.
What about Canada? We all sort of woke up this morning to, okay, the president's now back at it with Canada. Obviously a much different story, but if he does decide to go, toe-to-toe with them on this issue, how would that impact us here at inside the U.S.?
I mean, it's biggest trading partner, or one of the top 2 or 3 trading partners, but depending on the commodity, it's certainly number 1 in a whole lot of areas. And my sense is that Canada needs the United States probably more than the United States needs Canada. We're a huge market for them, and Trump has a lot of leverage there, and sort of willing to play that card, strong arm them a little bit. So I think the two sides will get to a deal. I don't think they're, I don't know why Canada needs to run ads that are anti-tariff. There's not even an election happening right now.
They're doing it during the World Series. That's what they're doing. So obviously it's Dodgers Blue Jays tonight, and a whole big portion of America is going to be tuning into it, and so they're trying to. That's why they're doing it.
And is that the Canadian government? I mean, it's just very odd. I don't know. My money's on Shohei for sure. I think the Dodgers got this, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
You are out west. Ryan Peterson, the best in the business. Always appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Talk to you again soon.
My pleasure.
Yep. Have a good one. All right. Still to come tonight here on the Hill. The top attorney in New York finding herself on the other side of the law.
I have a belief in America and all of its individuals who have stood with me, not only in New York, but all across this nation.
Letitia James pleading not guilty today to charges of mortgage fraud. But is her case political retribution or just serving up some justice? Plus, the sports fallout after the FBI breaks up that massive gambling scandal. What the National Football League is reportedly telling its players tonight. And day 24 of the shutdown, no deal in sight. The warning today from the man who is in charge of your next flight. I thank you for being with us tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Berman. Look at that. Beautiful night here, just over my shoulder. We're back and forth. Welcome back. A not guilty plea in court today. The New York Attorney General Letitia James addressing reporters outside a Virginia courthouse after pleading not guilty to charges related to mortgage fraud.
But this is not about me. This is about all of us. And about a justice system which has been weaponized. A justice system which has been used as a tool of revenge.
James is facing one count of bank fraud, one count of making false statements to a financial institution as well. The government accuses James of renting out a Virginia home she bought with a mortgage loan that required her to use the residence as a second home. James's legal team called the move, quote, vindictive in court filing. She is one of several of President Trump's political foes to face indictment recently. That includes former FBI Director James Comey, former National Security Advisor John Bolton. The president addressing James in a roundtable discussion yesterday, saying this.
You go after dirty cops like Comey, and you go after, these are dirty cops. Letitia James is a dirty cop. You go after these people and they say how horrible you are, and yet I got indicted 5 times and impeached twice.
With me now, Scott Bolden, NewsNation political contributor, Bill McGinley, former White House cabinet secretary in the first Trump administration. All right, gentlemen, hello, happy Friday.
Hello.
That's the title that they put in the prompter there, but really, these are two of the best legal minds in Washington, D.C.
If you say so, yes.
I already know what you're going to say. You're going to say no one's above the law. You're going to say I know Letitia James, and you know what, this is political retribution. I got that right?
Yeah.
But can you see daylight in either one's argument?
Well, the daylight I see is whether it's going to be up to the judge, whether the judge has the courage, if you will, to dismiss this case without letting it go forward. There is a way for it to go forward, and justice will be done through a jury, but there's enough evidence that the judge has to hold a hearing on vindictive prosecution.
Okay.
The internal memorandums, the internal considerations. I keep hearing from legal pundits that there is this issue of whether the internal documents are privileged or not, but the Department of Justice doesn't have a client. And so I don't think those documents are privileged. There may be some executive consideration, but if you can get past that, if they can show that it's more likely than not that this was vindictive, judge has to hold a hearing. And if he holds a hearing, who are the witnesses going to be? Donald Trump would technically be a witness. We'll see.
Donald Trump's not going to get called before this trial. It's the height of hypocrisy for Letitia James to stand out in front of a courthouse and claim to be the victim of a weaponized justice system after what she campaigned to go after Donald Trump and then went after him. I think what we're going to be looking at here is that the Supreme Court may be called upon to decide some of these issues with a lot of the U.S. attorneys, because the Senate Democrats are preventing the president's picks from being able to assume office. Then they're having to put their people in. These Biden-appointed judges are wanting to select their own people, and I think eventually this issue is going to go to the Supreme Court. I think it's worth reminding the viewers that Letitia James was indicted by a grand jury in a very democratic jurisdiction, Alexandria. She may be tried down in Norfolk, where the site of the house that's in question is located, but this is not exactly a Florida jurisdiction that was a 90-10 Trump district.
Okay,
there's a lot of evidence that leads to vindictive prosecution, including the fact that the internal memo that's been leaked has indicated that not only was there not a crime committed, but there's weak evidence, and there possibly was not a crime committed because the niece lived there and didn't pay rent.
Here's what I find interesting. One of the things. You see this video right here, Letitia James? That was her campaigning the other day with Zohran Mamdani after she got indicted. Every time, Bill, that you were here in 2024, and Scott, you were here, every time Trump had a legal issue, numbers went up and to the right. Every single time. Right? Is this the new way to campaign? You get indicted and then go on out, stand next to someone, and she basically did the same thing that Trump did, no?
Well, look, whenever you get indicted like this, especially when it's a national issue, the press is going to pay attention, and they're going to get the free airtime to earn media that they otherwise never would get. So is she going to get some cred with the very liberal Democrats up in New York? Probably. But that's not the issue. The site of the issue is down here in Virginia, and I think that they probably have a pretty good case. Now, this judge has set a pretty expedited trial schedule. I mean, this trial is scheduled to begin, I believe, in January. They're going to have all the pretrial motions, the exchange of discovery, so there's going to be a lot more chapters in this story before we get to the end of the year.
All right, more from you two later in the show. Scott Bolden, Phil McGinley, thanks guys, appreciate it. Still to come, other side, Chauncey Billups, Terry Rozier, two names allegedly involved in that major gambling scandal. But just how big is sports betting becoming? Other side of the break. Two experts with us live. And is the government shutdown about to affect your holiday travel plans? What the main man in charge of air travel is saying tonight.
This is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. And the fraud is mind-boggling. It's not hundreds of dollars. It's not thousands of dollars. It's not tens of thousands of dollars. It's not even millions of dollars. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars in fraud and theft and robbery.
The gambling and sports world's reacting tonight to that alleged gambling ring that prompted more than 30 arrests. The FBI director, Kash Patel, as you heard there, calling it one of the largest gambling busts ever, involving some major names in the world of basketball and the Italian mob. The Portland Trail Blazers head coach Chauncey Billups, Miami Heat player Terry Rozier, both placed on leave after being indicted on wire fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering charges. Now, Rozier is accused of illegally participating in a scheme that traded inside information to gamblers on at least 7 NBA games. Billups and others are accused of acting as what's basically known as face cards, luring high rollers to rigged poker games operated by the mafia. Attorneys for both Billups and Rozier have denied any wrongdoing. By the way, the NFL, the National Football League, now taking some action, sending out memos to teams, reminding them to adhere to the league's gambling policies. That's according to ESPN's Adam Schefter tonight. The American Gaming Association says that sports gambling is now legal in 39 states. This is the map. Almost everywhere you go at this point, plus DC. Hawaii, Utah, Georgia, South Carolina, those are the states that have bans altogether. Now, the gambling market itself is a massive industry. $115 billion last year in revenue, supporting almost 2 million jobs nationwide. That's another way to look at it. Total economic impact expected to be north of some $300 billion. Joining me in a moment, high-stakes poker player Doug Polk, back with us here on the Hill. But first, Art Manteris, a 2019 inductee into the Sports Betting Hall of Fame, author of the book, The Bookie, which will be released on January 13th. Art, nice to see you, sir. Thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. You have a very unique view into all of this, Sports Gambling Hall of Fame. I wonder, when you sort of survey what's happened here in the last 36 hours or so, what your big takeaway is.
Yeah, it's very disappointing for sure. The trading of inside information relative to injuries and player status, that's something that I have feared for a long time and talk about quite a bit in the book in January, as you mentioned. But I would say one of the things that was surprising to me was that I really did not know that the mafia families of the 5 boroughs of New York still existed in any meaningful way. No disrespect intended, of course, but since they are still around, then participating in fraudulent high-stakes poker games fits right in, and that seems like a natural progression of their talents. You know, you were. I was reading, you were labeled the dean of the Nevada bookmakers, one of the first to bring up the first prop bets way back when, Super Bowl 20. Refrigerator Perry to score a touchdown back in that game. I see you smiling, with that little bit of history there. But there's been a lot of focus now in the last 36 hours or so on these prop bets and whether or not getting rid of them is one of the solutions. Is it? Prop bets are problematic now from an integrity standpoint. I've never been a big advocate for college athlete individual performance proposition wagering, more so now than ever. But the leagues now and the pro athletes now messing around with proposition wagering, that is a bit surprising to me when you calculate in what they have to lose. The upside potential for getting involved in something like this by the two athletes that were named yesterday compared to the downside risk is just like night and day, and so foolish. It's incredible.
There's this building behind me, and the folks in this town, they're not doing much these days, but I got to imagine this conversation in Congress will pick up whenever they get back. Do you think they should get involved in this? I mean, I know this is basically a state level at this point, but
yeah, very good question, and a very complicated issue. In my experience over the years, federal intervention into sports gambling has been very counterproductive. Right now, the law on the books, the Interstate Wire Act of 1961, is so outdated that it's ridiculous. The repeal of PASPA in 2018, actually the ushering in of PASPA in 1991 coincided right with the onset of online commerce and allowed for the illegal offshore gambling industry to take root and flourish for many years. And then the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act of 2006 allowed for, as you have appropriately, the DraftKings and FanDuel logos, but that law, in an unintended manner, allowed for the creation of the cash daily fantasy wagering contests. But excuse me, I'm sorry to get back to your point, though. Today, though, things have gotten out of hand, and there is a need for federal intervention. But I hope and pray that the Congress would consult with the gaming industry and with state regulators.
There's probably people screaming at the TV to ask you, considering you're the dean of Nevada bookmakers. Tonight's game one of the World Series, Dodgers, Blue Jays. Who you got, Art?
The Dodgers are too much. They're just too much.
They are indeed. All right, Art Manteris, fantastic. Nice to speak with you, sir. Good luck with the book.
Thank you.
Yes, have a good one.
Thank you very much.
Of course. All right, here with us back again, once again, here on the Hill. Doug Polk, high-stakes poker player, live with us. Where are you? You're in Texas, right, Doug? Last time I think we talked?
Yeah, I'm based out of Austin, Texas.
All right, there we go. My memory's all right. So there's the other side of this story, right, which is, the Chauncey Billups allegations and what happened inside those poker rooms and with those poker games. And I just wonder, sort of from your vantage point, from your sort of the world, same question to Art. When you look at what's happened over the last 36 hours, what stands out to you?
Yeah, and I think it's good to recognize there are two separate cases, right? You have the sports betting and you have the poker. So as it pertains to the poker specifically, we've known about these kinds of underground games with cheating going on for many, many years. In fact, on a lot of my content I've made over the years, I've covered how these things can be used to be cheated. So just to kind of give a baseline to people that might not be familiar with what's going on, what you can do is you get a shuffling machine that shuffles the cards, right? So that every hand is different. In that machine, there's a camera. And that camera knows all of the cards because it can sort the cards after a session into order. And what you do is you hack into that machine, which sounds complicated, but it's really not. And then it will tell you exactly who will win a hand before that hand is even dealt. And so you'll know exactly what player will win. And then what these games will do is they'll have some house players sit in these games. And then when they get the signal they're going to win, they start betting big, knowing that they're going to win the pot. And then these unsuspecting players will be sort of like targeted and they'll lose money to the house players. So this kind of thing's been going on in poker for a long time. If you're in poker, you know about it, you know how to protect yourself.
Yeah,
but
so we're
now starting to see that come to the national level.
So that leads me to this concept of, in your world, that's known, right? But I think for the other 99% of us, we're just starting to learn about this. So what do you think here is real and a worry, and what do you think is, if anything, a bit overblown?
Well, I think this story is, frankly, I've been hearing about this specific game for years. So I'm actually almost surprised it even finally came to light. This is something that we've known about in the poker world for a long time. You basically use celebrities to kind of lure people in. I think it's funny they call them face cards, just so people at home know. That's not a term I've ever heard, and I've been in poker for only my whole life. So I feel like that's maybe something that's kind of getting thrown around. But I guess the real things to look out for in a poker game is when there's an automatic shuffler, you have to understand that's vulnerable. You want actual people shuffling the cards, that might seem riskier, but it's actually a good amount safer because they won't know who is going to win the hand. So that's the first big red flag. If you're playing at someone's house and you see one of those automatic shufflers, you should probably consider where you're playing.
Last time we talked, Doug, it was because of all things, the tax bill got passed in your industry. You guys, you feel you got hosed, to put it lightly, right? And I know you're trying to correct that, and there's lots of efforts going on in your world with that. But it leads me to the question of, a similar one at least, that I asked Art. Do you think there's anything at the federal level that gets done with this, or is this just not one of those things?
You know, I have a bit of a different take on this whole thing, which is I think we're just seeing the current process play out the way that it should. And I know that we have gambling in so many different aspects. We have commercials going. It's like onto the sports. It's within the game itself. Right. But the thing about what happened here, like these people gambled or tried to break the law. They tried to use information to make money off of it against other people, and they were caught and reprimanded. Now they're going to, face charges against them for what they did. So I think we're actually seeing the system kind of play itself out. With the sports betting thing, we're talking about prop bets earlier. Yes, prop bets are problematic because if you have this player did not score 8 points and, that guy gets an injury early and, he can't score 8 points. Well, the books can monitor player activity, or betting activity, and they can know, well, did a bunch of bets come in on this guy and then he did that? If so, we have a problem. We know this is somehow connected. So I actually think that the process is playing out in front of us the way that it should play out. We're seeing criminals be reprimanded for stealing money, which is what it is. It is theft. They're stealing money from people and they're getting caught. So I don't know, do we need more government regulation on that? I would argue no. I think we're seeing this play out how it should.
Fascinating. Doug Polk, one of the best in the business, with us tonight here on the Hill. I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon. Doug, all the best. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. All right. By the way, coming up 20 minutes from now on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, she is talking to one of the attorneys for Terry Rozier, the Miami Heat guard allegedly involved in all this. That's now 19 minutes away here on NewsNation. But before then, other side of the break, no deal in sight. It's a beautiful night, but there's no one here. It's remarkable, is it not? 24 days in. Is there anything that will move the needle? We'll show you what the man who's in charge of your air travel had to say today. And will the start of the World Series hit the right note with fans up north? Why, that's now a question after some big comments from the president. Stay with me.
NewsNation is here to give you all sides of every story, without the shouting, without the bias, without the division.
NewsNation's not going anywhere.
See why America's fastest growing cable network is NewsNation.
All right, day 24, the government shut down and the White House is sounding the alarm. Upcoming holiday air travel, they say, could be impacted in the form of flight delays, disruptions, and cancellations. The Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, saying this today.
If we don't have enough controllers, if we have controllers that are more stressed and less able to do the job, we pay close attention to that, and we will reduce the capacity of airplanes taking off and landing, or we will cancel flights.
But as Republicans are pointing to the planes being grounded as a consequence of what they call a shutdown from the Democrats, Democrats are pointing to skyrocketing health care costs. The Wall Street Journal reporting that the average cost of a family health care plan is now close to $27,000, a 6% increase from last year. Hakeem Jeffries from earlier today.
Because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, tens of millions of Americans are receiving notices right now that their health care premiums are about to skyrocket.
And then there's SNAP, which provides food benefits for 40 million low-income Americans. Some recipients set to lose their benefits by the end of the month if the shutdown doesn't end. Plus, 3 different airline pilot unions are calling for the government to end the shutdown. Just some of where we are tonight. Full panel here with me now. Lance Trover, former spokesperson for Doug Burgum's presidential campaign. Lori Watkins is a former policy advisor to President Obama. Back with me again from the beginning of the show, Scott Bolden, NewsNation political contributor. Bill McGinley, former cabinet secretary in the first Trump administration. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here on this Friday night. There were all these things that were going to happen, and that was going to be the moment, right? What happens with workers miss pay? Well, that's happened. Still a shutdown. What happens if there's flight delays? That's happened. Still a shutdown. What happens if we get to the point where we can't pay the troops? They took care of that for the last paycheck. And has anybody heard a good, oh, this is going to be the one that does it? No. Right?
Silent.
No. I guess that's kind of is that where things are?
Yeah, look, Americans do not like shutdowns. Let's get that out of the way. They've made that very clear for years. But to your point, what you talked about, when you start getting the major airlines starting to say we need a clean resolution passed, when you start seeing the pilots, when you start seeing the unions coming around, that to me says there is movement coming. The White House is the one who put all of that out today, basically showing an indication saying, hey, this is coming, you need to get ready. And so I think we have this idea that Americans are like, yeah, I'm not really comfortable with where things are going right now.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to point to an Ipsos Reuters poll that came out earlier this week, and 50% of Republicans are to blame for the shutdown versus 43% of Democrats. And the bigger number that I want to focus on is ACA support. 72% of Americans support extending the ACA tax credit. 60% are willing to keep the government closed until a deal is reached.
But is that 50-43 big enough to be like, that's the thing?
But the thing is, Blake, that the longer that this goes on and it's about health care, and people are getting their bills in the mail. I have already received a notice that I'm going to increase by 4 times what I'm already paying as a small business owner, okay? People are receiving these. The longer this goes on, the more letters that are going to go out. Okay. And that polling number those poll numbers that I just indicated, they're going to keep going in the favor of the Democrats.
Listen, Blake, my Republican colleague said that the public doesn't like shutdowns. What they hate more than the shutdown is that both sides are not talking. The Democrats are willing to talk. The Republicans are not willing to talk. And so when you talk about the blame game, well, they're ready to negotiate. And there's no reason to negotiate later because the bill is in law and they didn't talk to the Democrats when they passed the big ugly bill. So I think the blame game is one thing. We all want resolution, but you can't resolve a dispute or a stalemate without having a conversation. And the Republicans are driving the negative narrative that we're not talking to the Democrats. So
Democrats need to stop using federal workers and the American people as hostages to try and gain leverage after they were resoundingly defeated in 2024. Obamacare is a Democratic creation. They're the ones who created these subsidies and sunsetted them. This is a Democratic created problem, and now they're looking to Republicans to try and bail them out. The president, the White House, and Leader Thune and Speaker Johnson are doing the right things, pass the clean CR. They've already said they'll come to the table and negotiate to try and find a solution to another democratically created problem.
I want to get to the other big story of the day, one of many, which was the president announcing late last night into this morning, basically trade talks cut off with Canada. Markets were up and to the right today, Lance. That would have been a massive story 4, 5, 6 months ago. Yeah. What does it signal to you that this is sort of where we are tonight?
We have a $35 billion trade deficit with Canada. I don't know why they're so upset and what they're going to do. I mean, here's what I'm going to say, though. I think Ohtani and Kershaw are going to crush the Blue Jays. And that's what I think the most important thing is.
Here's my question. Are they going to boo the national anthem in Toronto tonight?
I'd say it's probably
probably.
It's probably a safe bet.
You think so?
Because they already did it during the NHL.
During the NHL, there was then. I wonder if we're getting there again.
But they're running commercials that
during the World Series.
During the World Series,
only
for the first
running
2 days.
Only running using. Sorry, I didn't just to frame it up. Language used by Ronald Reagan, and they're only running it during the World Series to try to drive that message home.
And it's Ronald Reagan at his best, and it drives the Republicans crazy because they didn't manipulate or edit anything. They used clips of his speech with a great background. It's a great ad if you're a Canadian and you believe that there's this trade deficit or that the U.S. is being unfair towards Canada, one of our best trade partners and one of our best friends.
Look.
Well, something that no one's talking about, and I did my research, Ottawa cut the number of American cars by Stellantis and General Motors and cut the number that they can import. I don't know if anyone's talking about that, but that affects the manufacturing in Ottawa. It affects, instead of staying in Canada, they're now going to Illinois. So we need to talk about some of these industries.
Isn't that what the goal is? The GM is moving the manufacturing back to America. That's the whole point of the tariffs in the first place.
I'm saying the reason for Canada, I was saying this is part of the reason why Canada is taking this stance. That was my point.
Okay, I'll give you the last word.
Look, one of the great responses, Dodgers sweep the World Series, hopefully, will be to shut down the ad. But the other one is, as Lance said, I think that the White House and the president especially is showing a lot of dexterity able to work some of these trade deals. He's standing up for the American workers. He wants to repatriate manufacturing, and he's going to do what it takes to have these conversations with allies, with our friends, to make sure that the American workers are the first thing he thinks about.
By the way, I should note the president's set to leave the White House in a few hours from now, headed over to Asia. Big meeting next week. On the schedule, at least, with Xi Jinping. Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Oh, Blake.
I got to run a break.
I know, but Carney and Trump are going to be in Malaysia together.
They're going to be there as well.
That's going to be very awkward.
So we're going to follow the news. Other side of the break, the extreme makeover at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And what else is trending? Just getting home, trying to catch up on today's top stories. Here's some of what's trending on thehill.com. First story, Hakeem Jeffries endorses Mamdani in New York City mayor's race. How about that? After declining to endorse for many months, 12 days before Election Day, that the House Minority Leader officially threw his support behind his fellow New Yorker and the Democratic Socialist. Also trending tonight, Trump says East Wing being demolished for White House ballroom. We had to take down the existing structure, he says. The president getting a lot of pushback, as you know, on this project. He said the construction wouldn't interfere with the current structure. That obviously, though, not the case. And then there's this. Former NBA referee says the arrests are the tip of the iceberg. This is the big story in the sports world. Tim Donaghy saying, get ready potentially for a whole lot more. Coming up here on News Nation, at least over the weekend, the best Sunday show in the business, Chris Steyerwalt. Hope you catch him 10 a.m. Eastern Sunday morning for The Hill Sunday. Chris has Congressman Steve Womack and Congressman Greg Landsman. That's 10 a.m. Sunday morning right here on News Nation. I thank you so much for watching us tonight.